In this video, we're going to discuss the Gestalt Principles of perception. Although the Gestalt Principles can apply to all the senses, and it does come at the end of the chapter for your textbook, I think it's easiest to explain it in terms of vision, so that's what we're going to do. By the end of the video, you should be able to explain the figure-ground relationship, as well as the different Gestalt principles of grouping that are discussed in the video. The Gestalt psychologists believe that these principles were innate, that they were present from birth, and that basically they were a way to describe the brain's organization of sensory information, taking those sensory building blocks and putting them into meaningful units and patterns. So, like I said, although the Gestalt psychologists thought these were innate, recent research suggests that there is some experience needed for these principles to actually take place or take effect. So we'll start off with talking about the figure-ground relationship, and then we'll talk about the principles of proximity, similarity, continuity, and closure. So the Gestalt psychologists believe that every image was separated into the figure and the ground, with the figure being the focus and the ground being the background. So look at this image here, and what are you focusing on? If you make the black the ground, you see columns, or maybe they look like chess pieces or something like that. But if you make the white the ground and the black the figure, you see these little shadowy figures facing each other. Take some time and kind of look back and forth and alter your perception there. Now remember, what we see is not the image that's reflected directly on our eye. The brain interprets this image and constructs an image that might combine information from all the senses, from our experiences, our expectations, the context we're in. Remember that the sensation is happening at the eye with the light waves hitting the back of the retina, and the perception is happening in the brain. Now again, these Gestalt principles can apply to all of our senses. It's just really easier to think about it in terms of vision. So the first Gestalt principle we're going to talk about is proximity. So the idea is that when things are close to one another, you're more likely to group them together. So here, there's 12 red dots. Now, would you describe this intuitively as 12 red dots? Are you more likely to say that it's 3 groups of 4 red dots? That's because of the proximity of these 4, and these 4. Now, when you look at these blue dots, you're more likely to describe them as columns. Here, going up and down, rather than rows, even though they're in both, because these dots are closer together in columns than the dots are in the rows. Closure is the tendency of the brain to fill in gaps to perceive complete forms. Our brain doesn't want gaps in things. It wants to see a solid figure. So, and this is helpful because remember, we have a blind spot where the optic nerve leaves the retina. And so sometimes we don't see a complete image. So here, would you describe this image as 3 semi-arcs or a circle? How would you describe this image? Again, we want to perceive. Our brain naturally wants to perceive a complete form. So rather than saying, 3 pointers or 3 little triangles, you see a triangle obstructed by a white triangle. And here, would you describe these as 3 Pac-Man? Well, when I first started teaching, nobody would have. But there was an anniversary, so Pac-Man became a little bit more famous. But still, I don't think you'd describe these as 3 Pac-Man. You're probably going to say it looks like 3 circles, because we want to perceive that complete form, with a white triangle overlapping the 3. The next 2 Gestalt principles we're going to talk about are similarity and continuity. So similarity is the idea that things that are alike are perceived as together. So we group things together because they are similar. So here, when we're looking at these, we see, again, when you describe these, you'd probably describe it as columns because these are green and these are green, but these 3 dots are blue. So going up and down makes more sense. These are alike, so we group them together. In this next set of circles and squares, probably more likely to describe it as rows because, again, these circles are similar, these circles are similar, and these squares are similar. So we're perceiving things, we're grouping things together that are alike. And then in this last one, think for a minute. My guess is going to be columns again because these are similar, the diamonds are similar, and then this shape is similar. So we're perceiving things alike because they are similar. Continuity is the idea that we want to see a continuous line in something that could be interpreted ambiguously. Maybe it could be interpreted as continuous, or maybe it looks like it's abruptly shifting directions. So with this first image here, it's a line with kind of a little semicircle going through it. Now, most likely that's how we would describe it, as I just said. Probably doesn't help that I described it that way. But you could also describe it as, I don't know, two funky little objects like we see here. This one. Do you see a straight line covered by a circle, or do you see two separate lines and a circle? So it's three separate objects. Again, this idea of continuity says that we want to see this line as being continuous and not shifting directions. Thank you for listening.